The best ball playoffs are getting ever closer. Josh Jacobs apparently is just going to put up 30-plus fantasy points every single week. We got league winners. We got more injuries. We got chaos. And we're 2 weeks away from when the money is going to be made in best ball. So we're going to talk through the league winners. Do you need them? Do you want to fade them? How are you feeling? What teams should we be excited for? What players should we be excited for heading into the best ball playoffs? How are we going to take down $2 million or $1 million? Or, geez, can I get 50 grand, 100 grand, something? How are we going to take down some money with or without Josh Jacobs and some of the league winners? That's what we're going to find out today.
Chaos is the perfect word, Eric, because
my God,
as you can see, I have a different view of my room because one of my monitors isn't working. So chaos ensued on Sunday. Chaos is ensuing here in Massachusetts. I'm sure chaos will be going on behind you shortly.
Oh, yeah.
So
my wife is gone. My wife is running some errands. Right now, the dogs are laying down, but if I probably get too excitable on the show or something, it'll send them into you'll see them running in circles around behind me.
It looked like a music video where they're just running up and down the walls. Yeah.
Yes,
perfect.
Exactly.
We're all excited for it.
Chaos is definitely the word I would use, where we've reached the point now. I don't know how you feel about this. This is not, we're not going to start with Josh Jacobs because I'm so sick of talking about Josh Jacobs. We will talk about him, but we've reached this point in the season where I just need the playoffs to get here because I've become like immune to every new injury that happens.
Mm-hmm.
So, we had Javonte and Trey Lance, and I'm definitely going to forget tons of different guys, right? But, Hollywood, I have a lot of Hollywood. He's back now, obviously, but he was out for a while. Then, like this week, it's just top of mind. Darnell Mooney goes down. Cooper Kupp is down, right? There's just Eli Mitchell, has basically not played all season. Not that I have a bunch of him, but, there's just so many guys going down. And Christian McCaffrey gets traded, right? It's just been so much chaos.
Yeah.
Jamar Chase hurt. Yeah, it has been so much chaos. And it feels like, again, I think we say this every year. We probably say it every other episode. It feels more significant this year. In the moment, I think it always feels more significant. But it feels more significant because it's a lot of these like really, really, really like high impact, high upside, Cooper Kupp, Javonte Williams, Jamar Chase, Hollywood goes down, right? Darnell Mooney, it hasn't been popping, but he's on the Bears finally look good. And you're like, okay, at least I got him alive, right? Rashad Bateman. It isn't. Last year it was right. Is Derrick Henry, you get these older running backs, those kinds of things. It's been a strange year, and I'm just ready for these next 2 weeks to honestly get over, because I can't. I would just wonder if you and everybody else feels this way. It feels like I'm just going to keep going down, like in advance rate and stuff. Breece Hall, I'm forgetting Breece Hall. It's all of these like young, exciting players, and a lot of them were popping that are going down. And it's like you look at teams. Man, it's pretty gross for 2 more weeks to like suck it up through 2 more weeks with some of these advancing teams.
Yeah, we're looking at all these first round guys that aren't running backs going down, like you mentioned. And remember in the offseason where we were like, we are so sick of getting this 10th, 11th, 12th round pick. And my curiosity now, Dan Bach stole my thunder a little bit earlier. I was going to ask you, of the first round players, I think Kelsey is going to end up being the highest advanced rate player, and everyone was having a discussion about advance rates and stuff earlier, but Kelsey seemed like the first round smash. So you did real well if you got Kelsey, and the guy in first overall for points has a Kelsey Adams start.
Right.
So now you're talking, he drafted back of the first round somewhere. He probably got the 12th or 11th spot, would be my guess.
Yep. Mm-hmm.
And all you had to do to correlate for that to start that team was, I'm taking Travis Kelce and I'm taking Devontae Adams because they're both in the AFC West, which is one of the strategies we were talking about in the offseason, right? So, yeah, these injuries are impactful. And we have to remember that it's a significant part of best ball and fantasy football going forward.
It's got to be like this is the hardest part, is we spend all summer talking about projecting the players, right? And just, honing in on the players we want to target for 10 million different reasons, right? You talked about the AFC West. We like the Raiders. We like the Broncos. Womp, womp. We had all, right, the 49ers. Oh, my God. And the 49ers only got better. It was like I was so excited about the 49ers, and then they add freaking Christian McCaffrey, but I don't get to reap the rewards because Trey Lance broke his leg or broke his ankle early in the season. We talk about all these things. Some we're right about, some we're not right about. And then it comes down to when you get to week 15, 16, 17, did your guys get hurt? And like sometimes it's not even like Hollywood. The Hollywood thing hurt me because I have a lot of Hollywood, a little more on DraftKings, but I have a lot of him. And it was, without Nuke, it was like, oh my God, this is everything I dreamed of. Maybe he takes a hit when Nuke comes back, but he gets hurt when Nuke goes down. He basically misses his 5 weeks, and comes back and looks great. But it's like I lost so much ground during those 5 weeks. It's just another example of, even when it's not Trey Lance or Javonte Williams or Darnell Mooney or Cooper Kupp or whatever that go down for the whole season, the injuries, it's everything, and that's the one thing we can't, like, we know that they're going to happen, but it's not like you can sit here and say, or at least no one worth their salt should be sitting here and saying like, oh yeah, I'm predicting this particular injury to happen. Like even with the Derrick Henry thing last year, I wasn't drafting Derrick Henry last year. It looked really bad for a long time. It wasn't an injury prediction. It was that weighs into, an old running back with that much volume or whatever. It does increase his injury likelihood, right? And so you're never predicting these things, but they do ultimately, we have to acknowledge that they swing everything. Josh Jacobs, there's a 10%, or I don't know what the injury rates are, 10 to 15%, probability outcome that Josh Jacobs was the one who got hurt and not Javonte or whatever, you know what I mean? And like, who knows, that alternate universe, what happens there, but it didn't, and it's one big slate and guys get hurt and it is what it is. But I'm so ready to get to those playoffs because the Josh Jacobs of the world, the guys who are doing well and healthy, it's like, God, you're lapping the field by this point in the season because everybody else, you have misses, and then you have injured guys. It's like half the teams in your league, maybe an exaggeration, let's call it a third of the teams in your league, are completely stone dead by now. And then you just keep piling on points with your 8th round pick that's scoring 30 points. It's like you're just lapping the field with those league winners by this point in time, largely because of all those injuries.
I also think that we can look to tie all of this up into like one gigantic example. Well, I guess it's 3 examples. If you look at the first round top 3 wide receivers drafted, right? It's Kupp, it's Jefferson, and it's Chase. So to your point, if you drafted Kupp, your teams are probably stone dead right now because of the injuries. But let's go to Jamar Chase, who you drafted him. He's injured. He's going to come back. And it's looking like from every report that I'm reading, he'll be 100% either the first or second week that he comes back. Your Jamar Chase advanced teams are going to be under relative to the field, right? Because you're losing so much value with that first round pick. But if you're getting Jamar Chase teams through now, like you're pumped if you get some of those in the playoffs because his ownership should probably be down. I don't have the numbers of this, but just based on relative stats, right? Like he's going to be an underweight guy in the playoffs. So you get a Jamar Chase team through. So if you were doing what I was doing with Jamar Chase, I'm probably going to have more Jamar Chase teams through than the average person, which I'm excited about. So my advance rate will be lower. My advance rate will probably be lower, but I'll have more Jamar Chase teams. And then you take Justin Jefferson, who has just been absolutely a smash for the most of the year, right? You're probably getting a decent amount of Justin Jefferson teams through, but so is everybody. And there's nothing wrong with that. Like it's nothing wrong with having Justin Jefferson, but your likelihood of being, different with him is going to be a lot less. Whereas, the Chase teams are going to get through and the Kupp teams are dead. So it shows you all 3. It shows you the risk reward of every single player that you draft in that first round, right? It's dead teams that you're going to be a little bit more unique with, and then teams that you're going to get a higher advance rate with everybody else. So
I love that thought experiment because, well, love is maybe not the correct word. It's fascinating to talk through kind of exactly like what you just said, because we can't plan for this. We don't know the results when we draft, right? You never set out to draft someone that's going to have a lower advance rate. Nope. You never set out to draft someone that's going to have a subpar season and say, please God, let me just sneak you into week 17 and that's when you'll go off. But that's also because, generally speaking, now Jamar Chase is not, he's not an example of this, but if you have if you drafted Allen Robinson and you sneak him into week 17, who gives a shit? You could be the only person with Allen Robinson. It doesn't matter. He's not going to break, he just doesn't have it in his range at that point to, him and Brandon Cooks are the guys I keep thinking of. It's like, I do kind of feel that way about Gabe Davis. He's like my 4th or 5th round version of that thought experiment. It's like, has he been great? No. Has he been awful? No, he definitely hasn't been awful. I mean, he provided, one of the biggest weeks of the entire season as a wide receiver, and then enough else, right? And just being out there and score, even when he scores like 7 points, you're like, I mean, it's better than him not being out there. I might use him in the flex or the wide receiver 3 or something like that. Those guys, Chase and Gabe and those types, MVS, another one, these high upside guys, and you can argue whatever you want about high upside and stuff. The exact, a Travis Etienne might get there if he, doesn't kind of start picking it up a little bit. He was not amazing to start, really smashed for a little while, has kind of disappeared here a little bit, and then he has Houston in week 17 So he's a guy
who's going to go off for 2 touchdowns and 130 yards. We know how this
Darrell
goes.
Henderson's my highest owned running back, so this is maybe I'm subconsciously wishing this into existence, but it's like Henderson was another guy that the Rams were all that way, where it was like, even if I get him to the final, now maybe, right, something happens, ETN goes down or something, but it's like when he was on the Rams, I was like, I mean, does it matter if I get Henderson? Like, oh, great, his ceiling is 12 points. Like, I'm not going to win $2 million with him anyway. But that thought experiment is fascinating because we know that's the game, right? The game is to not I don't want to have, last year, you didn't want to have, even though they projected the best, you didn't want to have Cooper Kupp and JT and Mark Andrews and Debo, right? And you didn't want to have the exact same crossover as the whole field. Mark Andrews was almost 70% owned in the BBM2 final. Kupp and these guys had 50% advance rates, and they just kept doing well. And then you factor in the crossover of like, Penny was actually pretty highly owned because even though his advance rate wasn't great, he smashed so hard in the playoffs, those teams just killed everybody. Same with Amon-Ra. These guys were like 25%. Devontae was popular, right? There was so much overlap. And so you want to avoid that, but like you still want Josh Jacobs on your right. If you could have 100% Josh Jacobs, you want it because he's going to get you there. But then you want to have the alternative pieces around him. That's like, yeah, I would rather have Jamar Chase in week 17 than Justin Jefferson. If Justin Jefferson's 25% and Jamar Chase is 5%, I want Jamar Chase every single time. But it's not like you can, right? It's not DFS. I don't get to pick. I don't get to do those things. So it's fascinating.
But that's why you have to pick before the season. Like if you make a stand on a guy, then you're more likely. I mean, still, it's tough as hell to get to the finals, right? You just want a team to get there. But to your point, if you're Travis Kelce or Josh Jacobs teams, you're super excited they advanced, right? But then it's sort of like you have a lot of Eskimo brothers that advanced as well.
Yeah.
All of you hooked up with Travis Kelce and Josh Jacobs. You all got laid. But guess what? Now I'm coming in there with the hotter girl, Jamar Chase, and you're a little jealous.
Yeah, the new girl, right? You all hooked up with the the cheerleader.
Yep.
And she's a nice gal. Everybody likes her or whatever. But the new girl moved into town at the end of the season, and now somebody else is bringing her to the homecoming dance.
Right.
And you're like, damn it, I 17-year-old dumb shit boy. I would like to. The new girl seems pretty interesting to me, and that's Jamar Chase, right? That's it could even be like JT, JT out here. I'm not sure he has the ceiling totally, but I mean, how many running backs are getting all the work in their backfield? It's like, if you have that, if you have that now, it's really valuable. James Conner could be valuable, even though, he's not a super exciting individual player. If he's getting 100% of the snaps in week 17, and you get him there, it's like, that's impactful.
Right. And Lunder, I would just say that she sounds like a very nice girl, is what I would say. I mean, I guess it's your perspective, right? So yeah, I think it also goes to show that one of the big conversations we're going to have in the offseason again is structure, which, like everyone might roll their eyes, but this year particularly shows that not just drafting within structure, but drafting the right players within structure are going to help you advance your teams. So there was a way to get JT teams through, right? And there were ways to get your Jamar Chase teams through, and there were ways not to get your Stephon Diggs teams through. My highest scoring team, my lowest scoring team, I shared it on Twitter earlier today. It hasn't cracked 1,000 points, right? And Stephon Diggs is on that team, and it's like, what a waste of Stephon Diggs to have a guy on a team that he's literally about worth 25% of the points on this team. That's how stone dead this team is. It's like a Broncos onslaught with Trey Lance as the second quarterback. It's bad stuff. So yeah, like in order to have these league smashers, Christian Watson, we brought him up like a week or two ago. We were like, what if he's the guy you need? And I'm really starting to think that Watson might be the guy you need.
He might be.
And I don't care who the quarterback is, because he did it with Love the other night. So, and that goes back to like a type of player that we like generally, that we all got scared off of because of a bunch of different things. But I mean, Romeo Doubs was the biggest thing. We were like, oh, Romeo's the guy that they're looking at in Green Bay, but they drafted Christian Watson ahead of him. He's probably a better player. It doesn't always pan out that way, but maybe we just bet on the talent going forward.
I totally agree. Christian Watson was definitely, as you see, I pulled up my Christian Watson teams here. We can just use all my shitty teams as examples as we talk through some of these guys, because some of it'll be decent data points. I don't know the answers to all, like you were like, X player. And obviously these are just my teams. So I'm just going to go to BBM just because it's a little bit easier, filter out some of the, like my highest scoring team is of course a big board team that I drafted on February 19th.
Yeah.
February 19th, it has like 12th round Miles Sanders and like, just total nonsense. Mitch Trubisky is my quarterback too. I was on my Trubisky run during those times, but like you see, I mean, I don't know.
Shocking that didn't pan out for you.
Yeah, what a surprise. Thankfully, I eventually pivoted to Mariota, which is working out just fine. But yeah, I was on the Trubisky run for a little bit. Let me tell you, there's nothing quite like getting the victory lap in. When he just because he won the starting, I was like, I'm telling you, he's gonna be the starter. He's gonna be the starter, and he's the starter. And I'm like, see, I fucking told you guys that he's the starter. Well, then you kind of quickly forget that he needs to actually score some fantasy points and not be awful. And he's pretty awful still, Mitch Trubisky. But so I actually think that my teams could be it's a little skewed towards like obviously I draft a little more wide receivers and all that kind of stuff, but like I basically have an average advance rate in BBM, right? 18% right now. It's probably going to fall with all the Kyle Pitts and Trey Lance and Javonte and everything that I have, Darnell Mooney, I have all these hurt guys, and the Cardinals have a bye coming up. They're an important team for me. It's not going to go very well probably for the next 2 weeks, but like if we look at Christian Watson just in BBM for me, I have a whopping three teams.
That advance rate looks great though.
One, yeah, exactly. One is advancing, and I remember. I remember this now. I was looking at this earlier today. I'm guessing I auto drafted or I was drunk or something happened here because I drafted both Lamar and Mahomes. You know me, that's not particularly my favorite strategy, the double elite, with Kareem Hunt, Rojo, Jamal Williams, and TDP as my only 4 running backs. And it's up by 72 points.
Boy, did Jamal Williams bail you out on this team.
This team is going to win and absolutely go nowhere. I'm going to advance and go absolutely nowhere in the playoffs.
If this team wins the whole thing, people are going to riot. Just so you know, like, how the hell did a Kareem Hunt, Ronald Jones, Tyrion Davis Price team get through?
Kyle Pitts. I've basically been using Evan Ingram as my only tight end. I drafted. So this is how I was like, okay, something went wrong here. I have AJ Green on this team, not my kind of guy, but like I have two smash quarterbacks, right? And then Justin Jefferson, T. Higgins, Elijah sucks, but Devonta Smith, Christian Kirk, Rondale's been useful, Jacoby's been useful, Christian Watson comes on when I need him, here just absolutely smashing. The wide receivers just completely carried this team. So like but going back to the kind of original point, this team's pretty much dead because it just has it lost the Trey Lance there, and the running backs are not great, although it does have Jeff Wilson, one of my very few Jeff Wilson teams. So that's triggering to be down. But like this team is close, right? And you're looking at these teams. I know it has Melvin, but like if Dobbins comes back, I know Damian Harris is hurt, but you get a little bit of good luck here down the stretch, and you're down 30 points, and you have Christian Watson and Tyreek Hill and Justin Jefferson, and these guys again, fucking Kyle Pitts, Jesus Christ. But Zay came in and saved the day this week. There's just so many interesting little nuggets with some of these guys. So Watson's probably a difficult one. I did want to pull up really quickly to go back to your kind of original thing, comparing those like first round guys.
Okay.
And like the advance rate. So like if we go to Jefferson.
While you're doing that, I just want to ask everyone, how did we grow up with just one computer monitor? I'm using one computer to monitor right now, and I'm very upset. It's the worst.
I can't do it. No, I can't do it.
It's awful because I want to go and I'm trying to look at my Christian Watson teams. So I have 11. The advance rate's only 9%, but there's 27% within 20 points of advancing right now.
See, that's nice because you can still get there with him. He's such a late hammer,
Yeah, and he could definitely get there. There's a team that's really fun with Christian Watson that I have. While you're pulling that up, let me just list it off. It's Mahomes and Jalen Hurts, Singletary, Miles Sanders, Darrell Henderson, Michael Carter, Mostert, D'Ernest, Diggs, Higgins, Kirk, MVS, Nico, Watson, Duvernay, Sammy Watkins. Must have been something that went on there, but it also has Travis Kelce and Darren Waller. So,
which I know we're pivoting the conversation here, but can we talk about I'm glad you brought up Waller. Alex asked, is Waller coming back? He's on one of my best teams that is fully intact, basically, besides him. I can't remember who it is exactly at quarterback, but it's like Hurts Fields or something like that with just smashes everywhere. I think it has ETN. I think it has Jamal Williams. I think it has, it just might have like Ken Walker on that team. It's like probably my best team, but it's like him and Brevin Jordan at tight end or something like that. And so like I really, really, really need Waller, and I guess he's coming back, Alex, but I don't know. And I'm not sure he can be that much of a difference maker. He wasn't really doing anything before he went down.
Anything's a difference maker at tight end though, unless
that's true.
Like for the team I have, it kind of doesn't matter because it has Kelce. So you're not super stressed about Waller coming back. I mean, I would love him to come back because Kelce puts up one dud in a playoff performance and Waller catches a touchdown and advances the team for me, then wonderful. Because now a lot of the Kelce teams get knocked out and now I'm advancing Kelce or whatever. So, I mean, these are all scenarios we're making up in our head to win $2 million as well. You know what I mean? Like, how can I win $2 million with this team?
And you think that scenario is crazy? I keep going through my teams, and most of them are so dead. The scenarios are far crazier than just a Travis Kelce dud and Darren Waller good game. Mine are like, okay, the two running backs ahead of Darrell Henderson get hurt, and it's you're just pipe dreaming all this. Justin Fields somehow comes back, doesn't suck in the two worst matchups in the league in weeks 15 and 16, gets through, and he throws 2 touchdowns to Chase Claypool in week 17. Like that's what we're really pipe dreaming about some stuff here. So Justin Jefferson teams, I have 14 Justin Jefferson teams in. Again, this is just Best Ball Mania. 21% are advancing with a 7% more close. The best team. So this might be that team. He might be on this pretty good team here. Yeah. So it has Waller and Everett. So Everett hasn't been great, but it could be worse than Everett as the second tight end. But here's an example of a team that I'm like excited about, but it needs Waller mostly, but it's got a Cousins double stack and a I believe Tua. I got Tyreek and Waddle. Yeah,
that's nice.
Tyreek and Waddle, Cousins to Jefferson and KJ Osborne. So I'm not worried about KJ Osborne, but you never know in the playoffs. ETN, Miles Sanders, Kareem Hunt, Isaiah Spiller, Tyler Algier, and Donta Foreman. And so Foreman has come up really huge on this team to go along with obviously ETN and Sanders. And then the receivers are just pretty sick. Jefferson, Tyreek, Waddle, Sutton, Ayuk, Josh Palmer, and Uncle Valus down here at the bottom. But yeah, so like this team is up by 172 points. It's obviously advancing, but then you're kind of looking forward to the playoffs and you're like, okay, I don't have Jacobs, I don't have Kelsey, I don't have this, which is on one hand good, but on the other hand, that's when you're thinking like, I need Waller, I need ETN, I need Donta Foreman, right? I need, these things. The Dolphins don't have awesome matchups in the first couple of weeks, and so these thought experiments I keep putting myself through are wild right now. But I'm trying to see kind of what do I want to have in the playoffs, right? Like this team is definitely one I would like to have in the playoffs, both obviously because it's mostly healthy and has some decent leverage. I think doesn't have some of the chalkier guys, but it needs, I haven't really found a team that I'm like, yep, boom. It's got Kelsey, it's got great running backs, it's got healthy wide receivers. I haven't really found any of those teams for me personally.
Yeah, and just while I'm looking at this, the other thing that comes back to my head is just taking stands on guys like we talked about earlier. You like Justin Jefferson a lot. You wanted as much Justin Jefferson as you could get, right? You only have 14 Justin. I mean, not that he's easy to get because he was a top 3-4 pick, but to that point, like you still only have 14 Justin Jefferson teams out of 150, right? So it's like, take your stands. If you have a stand, if you have a stand, don't force a stand if you don't like it or anything. But like, if you liked Justin Jefferson over Cooper Kupp, take the stand on Justin Jefferson, right?
And that's what I was pulling up here. So I have 20 Cooper Kupp teams, which to your exact point, during the draft cycle, when they flipped. So I was basically taking those top 5 guys in the order of their ADP. I wasn't taking a stand on any of them. I wanted all of Jonathan Taylor, Christian McCaffrey, Cooper Kupp, Justin Jefferson, and Jamar Chase. After that was when I have a lot more Kelsey, Diggs, and Devontae, which is one thing that's working out in my favor amongst the million injured guys on all my teams. But so when Kupp and Jefferson kind of flipped, I just and Kupp would fall even a little bit more. Remember that stretch, right? We had the Stafford elbow concerns and all that stuff.
Yep.
Kupp kind of fell a little bit. So I just naturally have a little bit more Kupp. So I have 20 teams, and it's like, look, you're getting some of these teams through, but they're dead, right? I mean, they're just, you're just sitting here looking at 20 dead teams, even though, like, I mean,
you're going to have to run perfect with it. It's going to have to be one of the teams that you went 0 RB where you grabbed Tyreek and AJ Brown. I'm not even saying you have that combo, but you might. It's a viable combo that you could have had on one of these teams. And that's the only way you're getting one of these teams to the finals, probably, if you ran perfect. But that goes into building your structure the correct way on what you're doing. We have a lot of these guys that are coming out on Twitter and saying like making fun of 0 RB. They're like, look at what would have happened if you went 0 RB and you took Cooper Kupp, Mike Evans, and player X. It's like, yeah, but I can do the same thing. I can say, what if you took Justin Jefferson, Tyreek Hill, AJ Brown? Right. I mean, like, it's so, I hate that, like, that engagement horseshit that people do where they're like, because I can cherry pick any of it. You can cherry pick, like, it's like, well, what if you went Najee, Javonte Williams, and Alvin Kamara when he was a 3rd rounder? Your team's dead, right? Like, so yeah, you can do it both ways. It's about drafting the team properly and having the exact, like, and drafting within structure. And that's why some players to me are just like dead. And I learn that more and more every year. The example I always bring up is Jarvis Landry, but when I was looking at one of your teams, you had Jacoby Myers on it. And I'm like, the hell does Jacoby Myers do that helps, especially on underdog, right? Like specifically on that site, he's doing nothing to help you for the most part. he's getting you what, a 8 to 10 point game here and there.
Yeah.
So it's just drafting the right players within the structure, and that's why Christian Watson was always a better pick. It's hindsight. It looks like hindsight now that I'm saying it, but he was always a better pick than guys like that, just based on what he could bring to your best ball teams.
Well, and it's a mystery box, right? When there's a rookie or some form of unknown.
Mm-hmm.
And this, we haven't talked a lot about Josh Jacobs, but I want to use this also on the Josh Jacobs thing because it kind of hit me today. If you're not a member of the Spike Week Discord, in the description, there's a link to the Discord. It's 100% free. We are talking around the clock about all this stuff. So if you would like to join in the conversation, totally free. And I highly recommend it. I learn something every single day from all these other people that are in the chat here and tons of other smart people that also aren't even just necessarily in the chat here. But we've been talking so much about Josh Jacobs, right? Because he's the clear guy that, at cost, right? No one, there is not a person on the planet that was like super pumped for Josh Jacobs. There's some people who might have drafted him, certainly more than I did, probably more than you did, probably more than a lot of other people did, liked him more, whatever you want to call it. No one, trust me, I am more ingrained into this stupid best ball space than just about anyone. I never heard a single person being like, this committee stuff is nonsense. The Josh McDaniels thing is nonsense. Him playing in the preseason is nonsense. No one came out and said any of that. No one believes it. Everyone and their mother thought that the most likely scenario was a committee. He was probably going to lose the pass. They brought in 2 passing down backs, not 1, 2. They brought in Amir Abdullah and what's his name? Oh, Brandon Bolden.
Yep.
They brought those guys in, and then they drafted Zamir White, and then they didn't extend Josh Jacobs on his fifth year option. Every tea leaf that we would read was a basically negative sentiment towards Josh Jacobs. And thus, in a market, the market's like, this is not good for him. So he falls. But what creates this upside that Josh Jacobs is running into, that Christian Watson is running into, is strictly uncertainty.
Mm-hmm.
Like, that is it. The whole we were doing our best to diagnose the situation, right? Everything that I just said makes logical sense that Josh Jacobs would fall to the 7th, 8th round, whatever. But the whole thing was that we really didn't know shit. We had no idea. Was Amir Abdul going to play on passing downs? I don't know. Was Brandon Bolden? Was Zamir going to be the early down guy? Like, there's a scenario in which Zamir White kind of stole the first and second down work, and Brandon Bolden's playing on third downs. We had no idea, but uncertainty, just like there was with Christian Watson, breeds upside. And like, that's the lesson is not that, oh, what was it about Josh Jacobs that we missed? Like, nothing. You didn't fucking miss anything. That's what people keep trying to like say. What can I learn from Josh Jacobs? The only thing you can learn is that situations with these the band of outcomes was absurd on the Raiders. Mm-hmm. Literally, Josh Jacobs could be like a fucking DNP right now, for all we know. I know that seems crazy now to say in hindsight, but go back to July and listen to all the, like, go read the Roto World blurbs and stuff from July. It was the uncertainty of the whole situation. This is a 1% outcome, or, definitely a top 5% outcome. But that's the point. It's the same thing for Christian Watson. I mean, he's scoring touchdowns at an absurd rate. But that's what happens when there's no one else to throw to when you play with Aaron Rodgers and you're a downfield player. That uncertainty breeds the upside. And so that's like been my biggest takeaway, definitely on Josh Jacobs, but on all these guys, right? Why were we talking about Javonte and Kyle Pitts and everything? Because people thought one thing, right? They thought Melvin Gordon was going to get 50% of the work, which LOL. They thought, the Falcons weren't going to throw enough or whatever, which has worked out. But we don't really know any of this. And so Josh Jacobs was the best running back on the team. Mm-hmm. If you just said, in the uncertain situation on what we thought was a good offense, I'm just going to take that best player and pray. That's really all it is. Like, we love to convince ourselves it's this other bullshit. It was just the crazy uncertainty, and he's the best guy. So let's see what happens. And this is what happens sometimes.
But what I would like to add to that is we also look for narratives to help like drive our preconceived notions of players. People didn't like Josh Jacobs in the first place. right? Like a lot of people, I never had a problem with Josh Jacobs. I'm like, he's a fine running back. Like
He's fine.
he's fine. But as soon as you found like that little slither of like uncertainty, and I was guilty of it too, because I did a lot of Zamir White drafts, and Cobra Kai in the chat brings
Me,
up a
you
fair
in the
point.
chat. Yeah,
Yeah,
hold on.
but
I'll show you my Zamir White. Well, go ahead. I'll pull it up.
but they were saying like at a cost of like he's a 15, 16 rounder. It's like great. I have a potential shot at the first round. I mean the starting running back in the 15th or 16th round. So we're like, oh, Josh Jacobs started in the Hall of Fame game. Oh, there's a new coach that likes to run multiple backs. Oh, there's this, there's that, there's this other thing. So we focused on that rather than, well, Josh Jacobs is still a really good NFL running back. Is he top 5? Probably no. Is he top 10?
No.
Probably close. He's right in that range.
Top, let's say for sure top 15.
Definitely top 15. He floats around there. And
he's like Miles Sanders or something, right? And they both have kind of worked out in their same way. Like they're the best back on that team. Are they stars? No. Can they kind of do everything well enough? Yes. And then you put him in a kind of uncertain situation on a good offense. This is what happens.
And he's going to be the guy next year. Like we say all these nice things about him, but to be realistic about it, he's now going to be a first or second round pick next year. And he probably busts. He's probably going to be the easiest fade of the draft next year now.
Didn't he do that 2 years ago, right? He was like a 1-2 turn pick or something like that.
Yep.
Not last year, but the year before, I believe.
Yeah, and he'll probably bust next year. But we need to stay off of those things where like we did it with Laviska Shenault on the opposite direction, where we're all like, we really like Laviska Shenault. Like he looks like he's gonna crush. He's on this offense that should be passing a bunch. He's a genetic freak. He's the greatest man alive. And truthfully, he had done nothing. He had really not shown enough to warrant like a 7th or 6th round pick last year, something like that. And we all fucking fell for it. All of us did. I don't want to hear it in the chat that you didn't fall for Laviska Shenault, because you did. If you're in this chat, you fell for Laviska Shenault. And so we need to put some stuff into perspective. And it kind of sounds like I'm talking out both sides of my mouth, because I'm like, well, Christian Watson was a mystery, blah, 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 blah. But he was high draft capital. He was supposed to be a really good pick out of the thing, and he could bust, but we'd rather have that guy in the 14th round or 13th round, wherever he was going, rather than a guy that's just dead already, like Jarvis Landry or insert player X.
And that's what I'm going to pull up some of these. Sorry, I'm trying to find comments. I think this is I don't know that I would say this is the floor, but I'm not going to argue with what Terrence says that Jacob's floor was Damian Harris last year. I mean, Damian Harris scored like 20 fucking touchdowns last year or something. I think that's an exaggeration, but that's a little extreme. But if your thought was, look, at worst case scenario is going to be like this early down grinder on a decent offense, I think that was fine, and then there's always contingent value. I'm trying to find
his floor was worse because of Zamir White.
His floor was not playing.
Right. His floor was not playing. It was
because they had Zamir and they had 2 other passing down backs. So like if he doesn't get the passing down work, which he's taken on a little bit more of it as the season has gone on, but like even when he was crushing super early, well, he didn't crush the first month or so, but even like when he started to crush after that, it was really just rushing. He'd catch he's kind of like Joe Mixon. He would give away, like Joe Mixon doesn't play third downs and long down and distance. Pirine does. So that's why people are like, how the fuck is Joe Mixon getting 8 targets every week? Joe Burrow just checks it down that much. Like on second down, he checks it down. Mixon's in then. But when it's 3rd and 7, Pirine's in the game. That's kind of how it was for Josh Jacobs. Abdullah would come in, or Bolden or whatever. I think Bolden's been hurt. But, someone would come in on 3rd and 8. But Josh Jacobs would get catches. Other than that, he was just running for 180 yards and 2 touchdowns, like this past week, 300 fucking yards.
Mixon's kind of nasty on that wheel route too, by the way. Like
Mixon and Jacobs are reasonable comps, like in terms of the skill set, like good enough. Same thing. Mixon's losing a little bit of juice, and I don't think Jacobs has totally lost it yet. But Mixon was actually like probably like the reason why people would get tilted is he's a good receiver, like a legit good receiver. He just doesn't play passing downs because he still can't pass protect. He's like how many fucking practices in the NFL has this guy had to go through, and he still can't block a blitzer or something? Like how are we still getting subbed out? Giovanni Bernard played passing downs over him, and people thought it was because of the receiving thing. It's because Gio was a better pass protector. Then Gio's like my size, like how is Mixon at 6'2", 230? How can he not pass protect? Anyway, the Zamir thing and people were like, I think they would use kind of what you said with, okay, I don't want to talk out of both sides of my mouth on Visca versus like Christian Watson or something. I think you want to. I had Jacob Sanderson on. If you guys don't know Jacob Sanderson, go follow him on Twitter. He's an awesome fantasy football analyst. Had him on for a draft this summer, and he said this, and it was like profound to me. I want to identify the types of players that I want to draft. Don't look at ADP. Don't look at anything. Maybe Visca is that kind of a player that you want to draft, right? Some people would use this. Let's use Gabe. Some people might use this on Gabe. He's on the Bills. He's going to play every snap. He has crazy weekly upside, but he's probably not a superstar wide receiver, right? And that was a thin draw to him being a really, a stud NFL wide receiver. But his archetype is such that the weekly upside and the seasonal upside is crazy. But maybe you don't like the price, just like you didn't with Visca. That doesn't mean you have to take 0. Right. That's not how this game works.
Right.
If Gabe scores 4 touchdowns in week 17, guess who you got to have? Gabe Davis. You can take more Zamir to the Josh Jacobs thing. If you're like, I just like the price better on Zamir. He was going in the 16th round or whatever. Yeah, me too. Look at this. I got 39 fucking 39 Zamir White teams and like 3 Josh. I can pull up the Josh Jacobs teams and like 3 Josh Jacobs teams. So I agree with that, but that it doesn't mean that it has to be either or, right? It doesn't have to be binary. I have 3. They're all
advancing.
I think I have the same. I have 39 Zamir White teams and 3 Josh Jacobs. I think I have the same amount of advancing teams of both of them. But you can still take Josh Jacobs, right? So maybe you're underweight. Like just give me 5%, right? Or just some, because he fits that story we're trying to tell. There's a path in which this happens. What happens this season? Christian Watson, there's a path. I want to take more Christian Watson because he's a 16th round pick, but it doesn't mean I have to ignore the guy. I don't have to ignore Gabe just because Christian Watson's a better bet. Like it doesn't have to work that way. You know what I mean? And I think we get caught in that too much. Like ADP matters, but the player archetype and like skill set and all that matters the most.
Yeah, definitely. I just looked up my Josh Jacobs teams in Best Ball Mania. I only had 5, and 2 of them advancing with 1 within 10 points of advancing. So this
dude is carrying a Matthew Stafford, Marcus Mariota, J.K. Dobbins team to the playoffs. Oh, I handicuffed him too. So look, I'm safe. When if he gets Cooper Kupp, this team has Cooper Kupp, J.K. Dobbins, Matthew Stafford, Marcus Mariota. CPAT really hasn't done shit. Bateman hurt.
Jesus, awful. But that's the team that I'm talking. I mean, other than your garbage ass quarterbacks, that's the type of team I'm talking about earlier. When you have Kupp, the way you drafted that team would still be viable if you had a half decent quarterback there, right? Yep. Because you took Kupp, but you took AJ Brown. I think it had like Waddle, T. Higgins, like.
Yeah, I mean, look, if Kupp was healthy, look at these wide receivers.
Yeah, like that still has a chance to do damage if it's, and that's why like drafting within structure the right type of players makes sense. And Evans probably wasn't, like, just going back to that, and I kind of jump all over the place, but I wasn't out on Evans like other people were. Being out on Evans was probably the right play. To be perfectly honest. Because if I was out on Evans, I would have more Tyreek and more, I mean, I don't need more AJ Brown. I have a healthy clip of AJ Brown, but maybe I have a little more of him too, and I'm happy about that. So,
don't you think we do all this conversation about advance rate and stuff?
Mm-hmm.
Do you think that AJ Brown and Tyreek are maybe low key kind of high advance rate players that people aren't really discussing? Yeah,
absolutely.
They're just like, that's in that range. It's just like them and Nick Chubb, right? That are doing like anything. I mean, Mark Andrews, but like he's really died off.
Yeah.
And is there anybody else that's doing any? AJ Brown, Tyreek Hill, Nick Chubb, right? From that range.
Right. And the way to make it different again. So say, even if you did have all these guys, but let's say you took,
God damn it.
Kelsey in the first 4 picks, and then you came around and you took AJ Brown and Tyreek. Like, those are all high advanced rate guys. But how many teams in Best Ball Mania do you think have those 3 guys based on their ADP? Minimal have that.
If one Kelsey AJ Brown team, oh man, it's alive. It's not dead. 20 points back. Mahomes, Kelsey, CD, AJ Brown. So not quite the same kind of thing you were talking about there, but in the ballpark.
But enough, because like you were high on both of those guys, but yet you only have one team with both of them.
Yeah,
right.
Two of my that Kelsey's one of, even though he won the first round, he's one of my my 3rd highest owned tight end, and AJ Brown's like my 4th highest owned wide receiver. They're 2 of my favorite picks. I only have one team with both of them.
I only have one team with both of them, and it's ahead by 20 points right now. It's on life support, but it just shows you. And then if you look at Kelsey, Tyreek Hill, I don't even know if I'm going to have any of those. I don't have any.
Probably not.
I don't. And you could have made it happen easily. Like if you took Kelsey early. So I'm jealous you have the one. I don't know if
probably 80 points back. So
yeah, but I mean, it was a smart play. Like, again, we can't go off of advancing as being smart. Some of the stuff you did around it might not have made. It doesn't look like a bad team though, just from what I'm saying.
Again, we might have had a little bit too much whiskey or something with a Kelsey, Goddard, Everett, but everything else looks fine. I mean, I like the wide receivers. I like typical 0 RB team for
running
me.
backs
Dobbins
are fine too. Like it looks like it should be closer, but you could have also just been in the wrong room where people just steamrolled.
Yeah, I mean, Hurts has been great. Miles has been good. Singletary's been good enough. Michael Carter kind of sucks. Rashad's come on here, and then obviously, like you said, Tyreek, whatever. I think it's just sometimes this is the other thing. Again, I know we like to bounce around, but fuck it. That the way scores fall together is the other. Like we talked about the injuries, or like we know it's important, but there's really nothing you can do about it. Like from a plant, right? When we're not that far away. We're 4 months away from starting this whole cycle over again about drafting, right? And all that stuff. But there's nothing you can do about the injuries. There's nothing you can do about how your points lay together.
Right.
Like this team, you look at it, you're like, is it great? No. But like, is it fine? Yeah. Hell yeah, it's fine. Jalen Hurts, Travis Kelce, Miles Sanders, Devin Singletary, Rashad White, Tyreek, Gabe, Hollywood. These guys are that's good. And it's really not even particularly close to
but you have
advancing.
1,420 points, I think, in most rooms, if I remember from looking earlier, is advancing or close to advancing, and you're behind by 80. So it just, unfortunately, you ran into a juggernaut of a room. Like I have teams that have 1,437 that's advancing, and it's like locked to advance. So 1,420 should be viable in most drafts, right? It just, you ran into a steamroller. Sometimes you're going to run into steamrollers.
This is always just such a good comment, but I this is like so evergreen with all my teams. It's like you go, every team I've pulled up here, you're like, oh yeah, look, Jefferson, Tyreek, AJ Brown, Hollywood, your wide receivers are awesome. But your RB2 is, somebody, Devin Singletary. Like, you don't love your running backs. I have not gotten the luck of all the running backs falling together on a team for me too much.
Not going too deep into it, but has this season changed your outlook on how you're drafting 0 RB versus other strategies next year at all? Or are you still kind of running through that process in your head?
I'll probably do more.
More 0 RB?
I think one of my strongest takeaways, similar to like the Jacobs thing, where just like I the Jacobs thing also pisses me off, not because of him or because he's going off, but I knew this. Like when we've talked a lot about, we're willing to take some stands, and in the early rounds, even when you're trying to take a stand, you're still not going to get that big of a stand. But like we would go through our teams, and you're like, why do I have 4 Najee teams? Why do I have 3 Mixon teams? Why do I have whatever? I didn't want those guys. I'm not saying that if you wanted them that you were wrong, but that was my personal plan of attack, and I wish I could turn those teams into right. Maybe I could have found that perfect Travis Kelce team if I didn't have those Najee teams or what I'm pulling names out. If I stuck to what my belief was, maybe I could have stumbled into that perfect team. That's kind of how I feel about the uncertainty thing, which actually bleeds into the zero RB thing. I'm not an idiot. I talk about this shit all the time. Like the uncertainty of Christian Watson bred upside. I literally will talk about it for every other uncertain player, but I didn't target enough Christian Watson. The uncertainty of the Raiders backfield, I fell into the trap of that it wasn't that uncertain. If you take a step back now and you look at it, it was absolutely wildly uncertain. Now I did take a lot of Zamir White, so and I'm okay with that, but I didn't dip my toes into the Jacobs thing enough. But the zero RB thing, I think the contingent based and uncertain backfields are the only thing a macro, not every backfield is this way, right? AJ Dillon was probably overpriced.
Yeah.
But the uncertain backfields and the contingency based running backs are the only thing in this entire market that I think is probably still going to be mispriced next year. We've talked about the quarterback thing. You ain't getting bargains on quarterbacks next year, in my opinion. What Travis Kelce is doing is probably not going to give you bargains on tight ends anymore. If there's a tight end upside, superstar wide receivers, it's just one season, but it's, I think it was somebody in chat mentioned that Amari Cooper is the only wide receiver drafted outside of the top, 3 or 4 rounds that's in the top 15 amongst wide receivers. So we're just crushing wide receivers, market efficiency wise. We're crushing quarterbacks, and we're pretty much crushing tight ends because Kelce and Andrews, are just the shit. Everybody else sucks.
Yeah.
So where do you lap the field? Jacobs, Ramondre, Ken Walker, Donta Foreman.
Yeah.
Those guys. That's where you lap the field. So I just want to lean into it even more. I like Nick Chubb. Eckler's been good. I obviously I like Javonte. There's reasons to draft all these running backs, but man, when you just look at the landscape now, it has changed so much. I just really want to if I could have as many shots as possible on finding a way to mix and match, and you find a team that has Jacobs and Miles Sanders and Ramondre and Donta Foreman and Ken Walker. You're like obviously that's you have to win the lottery, but that's the nut. It's the stone nuts. You have Kelce and Tyreek on that team or something. It's it's the absolute stone cold nuts.
Yeah. I want to get back to this in 1 second, but I just want to point out Al says he's currently in first in the drafters $2.22 tourney. GPP bros are down bad, and he needs that 10K this year. Nice, man. I actually hope you take it down. I don't think I'm even viable for it. And a special shout out to Al. He shows up to the Hometown Ghost Stories streams as well. So thanks for checking out both things. Yeah, I still like the Hero RB strategy as well, but everything you said is totally viable because the nuts this year was hitting on Kelce or one of the wide receivers and bringing it back with 2 of the real strong second and third round wide receivers and getting Ken Walker. It's not to beat a dead horse, but it's kind of me and not exactly, but it's close to me and Pete's big dog team where we had Breece Hall, Ramondre, Josh Jacobs, Ken Walker, but we also had Fournette early, but we had CD, AJ Brown, those were our 2 stud wide receivers. And if we could have added a third stud other than if we went with a wide receiver other than Leonard Fournette, that team's even stronger, right? If we just cut him out, kept the other running backs and went, I don't know, hell, if we went any other running back in that vicinity, Devin Singletary or something like that along with it. I'm not saying that's something we could have done. Maybe it wasn't there, but to your point, it gives you such a better team. It's so strong. So
yeah, it's just there's only one position that through the chaos of the season and through that uncertainty, right? There's of course uncertainty around Christian Watson and whatever, rookie wide receivers, young wide receivers, uncertain wide receiver situations. But the only position that you can get these truly exponential gains. Christian Watson's been awesome. But if you do, if you play DFS or you just do weekly projections or anything like that, Christian Watson's never going to project like Justin Jefferson or Jamar Chase or Devonta Adams or whatever, right? He's going to be like a good value play in DFS.
Yeah.
Ken Walker and Ramondre Stevenson are showing up as top 3 raw points. Like they're literally rivaling JT and CMC and stuff from a median projection in any given week and a ceiling projection in any given week, right? Josh Jacobs, same way. These guys all project like the top running back of the week, basically. Your Christian Watsons of the world project great. You're very happy to have them, of course, but they project more like Deontay Johnson or or something like that. I'm pulling a shitty name out of a hat, but they project like that, right? They don't project like these complete stone cold smashes in any given week. And so when you just do the kind of 2v2, 3v3 math in your head, it's like, would you rather have Ken Walker and Ramondre and Josh Jacobs plus Kelsey, and superstar wide receivers? The math is going to play out really far in favor of the zero RB team.
Have you seen the list of running back free agents for next year?
Oh yeah, I have. Somebody shared it with me on. I saw a tweet or something like that.
There was a tweet earlier. I have a little bit of it pulled up. It's Saquon, Donta Foreman, Damian Harris, Darrell Henderson, Kareem Hunt, Josh Jacobs, David Montgomery, Raheem Mostert. So the backfield, I mean, some of these guys are going to resign with the teams they're on, but some of them are going to move on, and it's going to really make that landscape a little more interesting as well.
Yeah, so definitely. I do think David's comment is good. I wouldn't put Chase Edmonds in there personally. That feels like a little bit of revisionist history. He was the starting running back on the Dolphins, who got one of the best offenses in the NFL. He played like 90% of the snaps in week 1. He just sucked. And Chase Edmonds has been like historically super efficient. He's not just as a receiver. I think people view him that way. He is a good runner. Like he's a super efficient runner, and I actually thought he fit that offense pretty well. Didn't work, but I actually didn't draft a bunch of Chase Edmonds, so I'm kind of happy it didn't work, but I wouldn't put him in that category. But 100%, J.D. McKissick, I got tricked into the and he got traded, so who knows? But stupid Naheem Hines thing again. He appeared to actually be the actual contingent value bet for the Colts in the backfield. But agree, the passing down back stuff, I think it has a little bit gone to the wayside. I think that's not logic we should use anymore in terms of, especially like the zero RB thing. People be like, well, I just need, guys to get me some points, so I'm going to draft JD McKissick on the zero RB. Like, I think you should just take your swings. Just give me all the Madisons and Pollards and Walkers and there's enough committees now that I don't think you need to take the guys that don't have the paths to winning you anything like JD McKissick anymore. I could, people might disagree with me, but I think that's like 2 or 3 years ago stuff that I don't think we want to do anymore.
I think we definitely don't want to do it on underdog anymore. Like, I think JD McKissick, I think the planets need to align properly where it's a team that you think can put up points, but they're going to be playing from behind a lot. And then you want to draft him on your DK teams. So I was taking McKissick on DK teams, but I wasn't taking Hines because I thought the Colts would be ahead and grinding JT a lot. I'm getting my hand in the dirt a little bit here and just saying the way I think teams are going to run out, but that's part of the way I play. It's why I didn't draft Saints this year, right? I'm glad I didn't do that. It's also why I didn't draft Seahawks this year, and that's a mistake, right? But I mean, like, we all have our own processes, and you have to be open to changing your process, like you're saying with this. If you're not open to changing your process on how you're drafting, because the NFL is different every year. I mean, look at the quarterback thing. We will in the offseason, but also look at what we're doing with some of these zero RB teams. Like, it's just, you have to be open-minded. And a lot of people aren't open-minded enough to be changing the way that they draft in the future. Well, I always drafted 3 or 4 running backs first. I'm going to keep doing it. And that's the proper way to play fantasy football. It's not. Everything evolves. Like the NFL favors wide receivers right now. And if you have stud wide receivers, they are a greater commodity. than any other position in the league. They can just do things that it feels like no one else can do more consistently. Joe Mixon went off for 50, right? Joe Mixon probably ain't sniffing 30 again this year.
No.
He might have a 20, 24-point game. That's potential, but he's not sealing it again. If I told you that Justin Jefferson had 3 more 40-point games in him, would you be shocked?
No, Justin Jefferson
Sure.
has been the most both insane. Consistency is such a good, consistent upside, like you said, is absolutely perfect. And Justin Jefferson is 100% the example of that. We started a new, I can just click over to it really fast. We started put together a new, we're going to keep building upon this, like with some best ball focused stats. If you look at Justin Jefferson, so you see over here, we started with nuclear weeks, spike weeks, usable weeks, and dud weeks. Essentially what it is, a usable week is basically kind of right at the median. It's going to make your lineup, we filtered out some of the noise, right? If a guy runs 3 routes or whatever and catches one pass, we're trying to filter out the noise of the stuff down at the bottom. So you do have to score a little bit more to be a usable week and a spike week than maybe people might expect. But if I go look at usable weeks, I mean, shocker, Mahomes and Kelsey are at the top here. But let me just go to wide receiver just to make it a little bit easier.
Terrence is asking what league winners have a bad QB and a bad coach. I would just say all of Eric's advancing teams.
That's correct. That's absolutely correct. That's 100% correct. Wandale was going to be one of them. Awful QB. Not a bad coach. Daboll's not a bad coach. But anyway, really quickly, the wide receiver thing. So like you look at the usable weeks, Diggs, Tyreek, Jefferson, Kupp, which is insane that Kupp was all up there and he's missed a couple games. Devontae, interestingly, Tyler Lockett, right? But then look at the consistent upside. Again, it's these guys. The first round, second round wide receivers, every week almost is usable. And then on top of that, they're like spike weeks. Justin Jefferson leads the entire NFL at wide receiver in nuclear weeks, which is basically kind of like 2 standard deviations above what that usable week thing would be. So like every time he's usable, he's crushing. Like, basically like 60% of the time, it works every time. 60% of the time he is having, a decent week. It's also like a really big week. So like you said, he's just going to keep putting up those 25, 30, 30, 35, 40. Mixon's like 10, 12, 17, 8, 40, 50, whatever, 12, 8, 6, right? And you want the spike, but the dream is this. Cooper Kupp, Tyreek Hill, Devontae Adams, where it's like they're putting up weeks that make my lineup better every week. But then even when they do that, it's like 2 times better than what everyone else in my league is getting from their normal wide receivers.
Yeah. I mean, I actually like this tool a ton because it shows me that even though we have had Jamar Chase out a couple weeks too, he still has had 7 usable weeks for you, which is great. And Terrence is dunking on me on the chat, showing that Joe Mixon will dunk on me Sunday when he plays the Kansas City Chiefs and puts up 40 against them, which is
slide in my DMs. Yeah, it's not happening.
You don't think so?
Joe Mixon's not smashing against the Chiefs. No.
Potential there.
Yeah, but he's not running for 1 million yards. Mahomes is going to light them up like a Christmas tree. They're going to have to throw the ball. He'll catch some checkdowns, but you ain't getting 40 balls from a bunch of 3-yard Joe Mixon catches. I hate to tell you.
Yeah, Tuesday I'm looking at just firing half my multi-entry as Mahomes and half as Trevor Lawrence this week.
Oh yeah. Oh God. Do you just play DFS with all your favorite best ball picks every single week?
Not every week, but I mean Mahomes against the Bengals, and I think that Trevor Lawrence has the Lions this week. So like I did Lawrence. I'm the only guy that played Lawrence last week and didn't cash. So yeah, it was a great Sunday.
I lost more money than I will care to admit on that Josh Jacobs overtime long touchdown run, winning the afternoon 1500.
Oh my God.
And dropped to 10th on that, or from first to 10th on that one run. So that was
fucking gross.
The
fact that you were in first without him at that point is remarkable.
I know. Yeah, shout out DeAndre Carter, and shout out our good friend Gretch for being very smart on DeAndre Carter. Couple thought exercises before we get out of here that I want to run by you, because some people have some, like they're talking about Olave, who you're seeing.
There it is.
There it is. Yep, there it is. Looks like my wife is home. Olave being the optimal, right, 7th to 9th rounder. So that's also where like Jacobs lies. We haven't talked about DeAndre Hopkins, but he's kind of a two-parter. One, the thought experiment I posed on Twitter and to the Discord was, if you could have 100% DeAndre Hopkins right now and admittedly lowered your advance rate, let's just say in BBM, or only two options, or 0% DeAndre Hopkins right now and a high, you're getting a whatever percentage boost to your advance rate. So you're definitely getting more teams through with the non-Hopkins teams, but on the other side, you're getting 100% Hopkins. Which would you sign yourself up for right now? Like knowing you get to know everything that's played out and feel how you feel about Hopkins and everything right now.
I mean, I probably want Hopkins just based off of like the upside and what we see that he can still do that people thought he wasn't going to do this year. Like I know like Julio like died and he's terrible now and Hopkins is getting up there in age, but his hands are just, that dude is just incredible. Like
that one-handed catch he had, that one-handed catch he had Sunday was out of this world. He wasn't even he was trying to set a pick and Kyler threw it to him and he
just like a superpower where he just like Spider-Man's it and just I think I'd want Hopkins. I wish I got more Hopkins and I wasn't even fading him, right? Like I liked Hopkins. I was like,
and I was
7th, 8th round Hopkins. I know he's gonna miss 6 games, but so what? It's the early 6 games, lowers his chance of injury for being there in the fantasy playoffs based on less games played early. Like, let's go. Let's take Hopkins, and I should have taken him more, to be perfectly. So they're saying that they think Hopkins is going to be tough to get through, and I'm going to take a look at my Hopkins teams.
Yeah, let me know what your advance rate is on
and I'll tell you what it is. If I had 2 screens, I would share it just so you can see it, but I think I'm going to actually be messaging Hacker after this to help me out. Unless someone in the chat knows something about computer monitors, then reach out to me, please, because I'm crying on the inside. I have 11 Hopkins teams in Best Ball Mania, which, shows that I wasn't fading him. I was actively drafting him, and I have a 27% advance rate with them. So I'm pretty excited about that.
Yeah, for sure. Why does everybody, you ever notice this? The people did this to me in the Discord. And yes, if you're listening, I'm giving you shit about it because I posed this question. All it was a theoretical, basically, are you willing to sacrifice advance rate for probably a little bit more? I mean, people are going to say, oh, what about this guy or whatever that was in that range? It's like DeAndre Hopkins, I think, is just going to project better. That he projects like a top 5 wide receiver every single week. So he projects better. So you're getting more upside and more projection from DeAndre Hopkins. And people are like, well, like Cobra Kai's in the chat, like, I love you, buddy. And this is not me shitting on you, but it's like, well, how many teams am I sacrificing? And the people in the chat were like, well, but he went next to Devonta Smith. So like, does this mean I can't get any Devonta Smith? I'm like, Jesus Christ. Assume that you can also get Devonta Smith on teams, right? You're not going to get 0 Devonta Smith. It's just a thought exercise about advance rates, advance rate versus the ceiling outcome, because I'm doing these kinds of things myself. I feel like they do help you think some of these things through, right? How do you, like, we can sit here and say, oh, I'm playing for upside and all that, and then I didn't draft DeAndre Hopkins. And not because I'm an advance rate bro, but because I thought there was some other things, involved in also taking a guaranteed 0 for 6 weeks. Thought there was a bunch of different variables. And now I look back and I'm like, if I had it to do over again, I would have just been smashing DeAndre Hopkins. Yeah. And so I think it's at least an interesting thought experiment to be like, pick how many. This is good from Fox Crown. Yeah, it's a good mental lunch. This is a lunchtime learning session. So instead of don't do it at the gym, it's not exercise.
You know what you did though is you outed all these people as flat exposure bros because you made their head explode that they had to have more than 8% of one player and they didn't know how to react. What do you mean I have to draft all DeAndre Hopkins? I can't draft anyone else around him. You can draft him around a head, idiot.
Yeah,
you know, like
he's gonna fall sometimes. You could take him early and get Devonta Smith. I'm like, why are you panicking? I'm like, why are we talking about Brandon Ayuk in this DeAndre Hopkins, advance rate conversation? Why are we talking about? Does it really matter if you lost 8 teams or you lost 6 teams? No, it does. It doesn't really matter. I think it's kind of a fun. Now Fox Crown has me thinking about other words than exercise to come up with, but it has me thinking, like, at this time of the year, I like to think about those kinds of things because, I would not have drafted 100% DeAndre Hopkins, obviously. But when we go back and people are like, how did I miss on Josh Jacobs?
Yeah.
That doesn't mean anything to me. But like thinking through DeAndre Hopkins, I think is insightful, at least. I'm not even saying you have to learn anything from it, but that thought exercise, sorry, Fox Crown, can be useful to me as opposed to trying to go back and do the revisionist history thing on Josh Jacobs. Like, Josh Jacobs, it is what it is. It happened, but DeAndre Hopkins is DeAndre Hopkins. Like, he just is who we knew he was.
Yep.
You're getting that. You just had to sacrifice 6 weeks. Was that worth it? It's up to you, but it's at least good to think about.
Shout out to Fox Crown, good friend of mine in real life. This was actually his first year playing best ball.
Ooh.
And he calls me and asks me some questions, and it helps me think through things because we had that conversation about going back to the basic level. So trying to talk to somebody that's just coming into it it's always not just helpful to whoever you're talking to, it's helpful to yourself to have those conversations. So shout out to him for that. We might have this conversation about D-Hop again next year, but with Alvin Kamara if he gets suspended, right?
Yeah. So because he's definitely gonna have his legal proceedings in the offseason now.
It's not 1-for-1, just based on like position and team and all that other stuff. But if he gets suspended for 6 weeks, there's the talk because he's gonna drop. He's got 6 weeks. He's on the Saints. 9th, 10th round, Alvin Kamara might be fun. I'm not a big Saints fan, and they don't look like they can add much either because they're in cap hell right now. But yeah, that might be a fun way to draft Kamara. I mean, I'm down for that. So, well, I don't think Kamara. Cobra Kai said Kamara sucks now. Why would I want him next year? I still think that's just a product of the team, more so than a product of Kamara sucking.
Yeah, Kamara had like a 40-point week not that long ago. The upside is still there for Kamara for sure. It's just the situation's so terrible.
Yep.
Jesus.
No, I do like this Hopkins thought process because we can do it through injury too, right? When we see somebody that's coming back week 7 or 8 from injury, they're going to be way down and people are going to be even more scared because they were injured. And it's now, do I take like this huge, risk but absolute value in a guy going forward? So the Hopkins thing is something we're going to talk about.
He could be good, but the same thing as Hopkins, right? For different reasons. Hopkins was on the juice. He could be good by the time right? People were drafting Deshaun Watson and wouldn't draft DeAndre Hopkins, right? That's kind of crazy to me. People will not draft, I don't know, let's say it's Javonte next year, right? He's going to be like a Dobbins type thing next year. So like he won't be ready like full go week 1. Maybe he isn't all year. I have no idea. But also maybe by this time next year, he's the man. We don't know.
Yep.
I have no idea. Are you willing to make that bet? Those are the things that I think are the helpful exercises. I hate this time of the year because everybody goes back and says, how could you miss? You didn't draft Josh Jacobs. How could you miss on this? It's like, dude, can I line up the evidence and be like, okay, you tell me
reason not to.
Yeah, and there's also reason to draft him, but I'm saying the revisionist history part is what's not helpful about trying to do this analysis. But I think the things like the Hopkins one is like it, because it doesn't really have anything to do with DeAndre Hopkins. It just has to do with this thought experiment of, am I willing to give away some teams? Because that's what you're doing. If you drafted 100% DeAndre Hopkins, you would have had teams that probably would have got through if you drafted someone else, but they lost those 6 weeks and you lost them. And you were like, God damn it, that was a good team. But you're also going to have teams that are juiced up, right? You took him instead of Elijah Moore. Wouldn't you rather have DeAndre Hopkins on all your freaking... My dogs would rather have DeAndre Hopkins than Elijah Moore on all their teams. So it's that analysis that you have to do to figure out which side you want to be on, and without thinking it through, right? I don't care about going back and saying, like, how much did I project Brandon Bolden for? Like, that doesn't fucking help me.
Right.
But thinking about what do I feel, what do I feel about this advance rate conversation is a good one.
But it's also, you have to be able to go back and have honest conversations with yourself, because a lot of people can't do that. They'll go back and they'll look at everything they did right. They'll ignore what they did wrong, and they'll continue down that path. So for every Josh Jacobs you either got right or wrong, you have to have the correct conversation with yourself on why you did or didn't do it. Does it make sense? Is there reasons you should look at it and change your perspective a bit for certain players going forward? And I don't think you have to with Josh Jacobs specifically. We outlaid all the red flags for him. So I don't think he's one that you have to worry about. He just hit. It's fine. It's absolutely fine. The Hopkins one, I mean, I was fine with Hopkins. It's not like I was taking him every time in the 7th round or whatever. You weren't taking him. It's going to be a learning spot for one of us.
Another good one.
Chris Godwin. I liked Godwin this year.
I have some, and this is another thing, is like, I was willing to mix in some Godwin. I don't have a ton of Godwin. That was a little more of a Bucks. I got down on the Bucks, especially late in the draft cycle. I was not very high on the Bucks, which I feel good about, but them being so bad and not being able to throw the ball down the field is just turning into Chris Godwin being a smash now. And so it's like kind of counterintuitive, but it's working out for Godwin drafters. But it's the same thing. I was willing to
5 Godwin lineups.
I was willing to dip my toes into Chris Godwin, but I wasn't doing it for DeAndre Hopkins. And realistically, they weren't that different. Godwin was actually a little more expensive, although he was, not guaranteed to miss any games, but right. you expected a slow start. So why would I be willing to dip my toes into Godwin and not Hopkins?
Yeah, I mean, I was in on Godwin, but this is one of those scenarios where we can say we were both sort of right and wrong about certain things, because I was in on Godwin because I thought that the Bucs would be fine on offense. I wasn't projecting them to be, an elite offense, but I thought Godwin, Evans were going to be fine. I thought Brady still looks fine. That team just around him looks like they're terrible.
They lost Wirfs. They just lost Tristan Wirfs this week. So it's going to be bad moving forward.
The team itself is in shambles, but that helps Godwin because Brady's just chucking it out to him like on 3-yard outs and stuff like that, and just seeing what they can do with it. But I liked Godwin to begin with because I believed in the player. I believed in the offense. You didn't believe in the offense. You were right about that. I was wrong about the offense, but I'm still getting there just based on talent. And
right. He's just awesome. He's so good.
Maybe you should have been looking at his talent a little more, and maybe I should have been a little more scared about their offense. Right. So these are like lessons we can learn going forward from each other, I would say.
And the same thing as we talked about Jacobs, the same thing as the thought experiment with DeAndre Hopkins. It really doesn't have anything to do with Chris Godwin. Like, if you remove that name and you just put his profile up there as well as the Bucs profile, you could have said, okay, there's a lot of things to be worried about with the Bucs, but I still want to sprinkle this guy in because he's awesome. I could have said that same thing. I'm very confident that the Bucs are maybe not as good as everybody's projecting them to be, but that doesn't mean I have to get away from this superstar.
Mm-hmm.
Right? Because he's still a superstar. It's not like it's Tom Brady. They're not going to throw for 0 yards. And if they're really that bad, we're seeing what happens when that could be. So it's that balancing act. The one other thing I wanted to bring up, Godwin, Nuke, these guys are good examples. But like we've talked about Josh Jacobs a ton. We talked about Travis Kelce, Tyreek, AJ Brown, those guys that are, I think Mahomes will be up there. Those guys that are going to be Ramondre and Ken Walker are definitely going to be high advance rate players, right? They've just really crushed the whole season, whether it's crushed totally or crushed their ADP. We know those guys are going to be high advance rate players, but who is a guy like off the top of your head really is totally fine that maybe isn't that high advance rate player, but that if you could pick him to be on a best ball team, you're looking right, that leverage thing like we talked about before. Who's the player I want on any team that I see that like projects awesome moving forward, or you're just excited for moving forward, that's not necessarily the stone chalk, right, that everybody else is going to have?
Ooh, that's a good question. I wish you had prepped me for this. You would think so. I guess for me, it is Chase, right? Like just in
Yeah, that's a good
general,
one.
it's got to be Chase based on the way I drafted him. I mean, this is a personal selection. The way I drafted him, his advance rate, I'm guessing, is going to be below the field, and I just still in a 1v1, I think Justin Jefferson's the best wide receiver in the league. I do. Like I can admit that, but I can admit in a 1v1 on a 1 week basis that I'd rather have the lower owned guy, and the lower owned guy is probably going to be Jamar Chase. So I think his ceiling is slightly higher than Jefferson's personally. That would be my answer. I think it has to be an early guy, right? Like it has to be a first or second rounder for this question.
Great follow up to that I forgot to pull up Chase. We were going to go through the early round guys earlier. Mm-hmm. So I have 20 Cooper Kupp teams and I'm advancing 15% of them. I have 14 Justin Jefferson teams. I'm advancing 22% of them or something like that. So again, this is just my teams, just my subset of 150. But you can see, even though Cooper Kupp is hurt, Jamar Chase being hurt, I'm barely advancing any, right?
Yeah.
One Jamar Chase team. And so I think you're right. I think that, even Cooper Kupp teams are going to get through more because he just was such a smash for those 9 weeks that he played. Mm-hmm. And Chase is going to end up playing kind of the same amount of weeks. Jefferson obviously is going to be higher. Kelsey's going to be higher. Diggs is going to be higher. Yep. Devontae is going to be higher. Eckler's going to be higher. I don't know about JT. Definitely not Najee. Derrick Henry's going to be higher, right? So Chase is going to be definitely in the bottom 3 of that first round advance rate. And he was the guy you had to have last year as a rookie. He of course can be the guy you want to have over those other guys. So
this actually lines up perfectly with what I was talking about earlier, because you had 17 Chase teams and they were like 5.88% advance rate or something like that. Yep. I have 29 Chase teams and they're at 6.9% advance rate, but I have 17%, a little over 17% within 20 points.
Yeah, and
so a late push with
no
Chase.
More. Yeah,
right. So my Chase advance rate, like, and you are overdrafting Chase. So
correct. I'm overweight on Chase, not like a ton, but I'm still over.
But you are, and not everyone's going to be overweight on him. So if I'm getting, let's say I get 13-14% Chase through, I'm fucking stoked, right? Like I'm wheels up. Because what's your Jefferson advance rate again?
Like 21. I'll pull it up. Jefferson. Yeah, 21.
Yeah, so that brings up my and 28% within 20 points. So like
right. It's not even close. He's lapping Jamar Chase.
Right. So this is my point that I was making with Chase on this. Like if you get Chase through, you might be in a really, really good spot on those Chase. I mean, it's the team around it too, but if you're getting a Chase team through, the team around is probably pretty good in theory, because they had to carry him.
100%.
Right. So
100%.
I'm excited about the Chase teams that I get through going forward.
I'm going to hit some of these. Al says Pollard. I wanted to look because I actually think Pollard is going to be not like super chalky, but I mean, these are just my teams, obviously. I have 22 Pollard teams in BBM. 27% of them are advancing, and almost 41 are right there. So like he's also surging. I think he could end up being
real
again, not.
chalky.
I think he could be. I think he could be pretty popular. It's just that tier, like at hero and zero RB teams that dip their toes into that whole range. That range, Pollard, Jacobs, Walker, Ramondre, is just like the nuts. So like all those guys, I think, are going to have quite a bit of ownership. Pollard less than those other guys, but I don't think it's. I think you're not going to be the only guy showing up to your first round playoff matchup with Tony Pollard, is what I'm saying. That's for you. Probably will be with Jamar Chase, or maybe one other guy. But like Pollard could be like, what is it, 12-man groups in the first round or whatever. Pollard could be 50% in there, and I would not be that surprised.
So this is the most hilarious advance rate things I've seen with a player. Is my Tony Pollard one. I only drafted him 7 times in BBM. I wasn't like high on him in that spot, which, a thing to go back and look at in the future. I have a 71% advance rate with him. But those 4 teams that are advancing, listen to the points ahead on them: 198, 188, 162, and 117. So those 4 are definitely advancing. There's no way they don't. The other ones are, one of them has like a slight outside shot. The other 2 are dead. But when they're advancing, they're freaking advancing. So Pollard is going to probably be relatively chalky. I know it's a small sample size, but I think between the 2 of ours, it kind of shows that Pollard is going to be a high advance rate guy for sure. I mean, he's smashed those 3 or 4 weeks or whatever, like unlike a lot of other players.
Definitely. So hitting these, David says Garrett Wilson. I think he might end up a little popular, a little, high ownership too.
Did you draft a lot of Garrett Wilson? Because I think I did.
We can look and see. I hate these moments where I don't know how much I drafted of the player.
Oh my God, I didn't realize how much I drafted of him.
And I don't know how much is okay. I'm okay with this. Only 13% advancing, but 15 teams. I'm cool with 15 teams.
I have 39.
Holy fuck.
Garrett Wilson, I have a 20% advance rate with 36% within 20 points of advancing.
Okay, how the hell is this team not advancing? See, this is some bullshit. The run bad on the teams, right? So I'm advancing 13%, which is more than one team, right? But you look at this is sorted by total points. My highest scoring team is advancing by 44, but which sadly is a Javonte team. Goddamn, Mahomes, CMC, Javonte, Miles, AJ Brown. That could have been fun. But you see, my next 3 highest scoring teams, none of them are advancing. None of those are advancing. I got to get down here to my 5th highest scoring Garrett Wilson team to find the other advancing team, which is interestingly CMC, Aaron Jones, Lenny. It's kind of interesting. Olave, London, Wilson. Oh God, the tight ends. Always the fucking I would get scared to scroll down to the tight end portion because you're like, please, Kelsey, Andrews, like Njoku, like that. There's a very short list of guys you want to see on that tight end list. But so advancing 2 Garrett Wilson teams. So maybe he's a better answer than I thought. This is a fascinating one. I'm just worried he's not going to get ramped up enough, but I could be wrong. If he comes back this week and it gives him a few weeks to get ramped up for the playoffs, I think Jameson Williams is who David says could be a good one. I also think Rashad White. Charles says got a lot of Rashad White advancing right now, hoping he keeps the job. You and me both, brother. I need my running back exposure needs Rashad White to continue to be a thing. Jeff also is on Rashad White. Alex says Andrews, going back to Andrews. What do you think, Andrew? We remember we probably did a show and the whole world was, creaming themselves over Mark Andrews after the first month or month and a half. That has gone away. Remember, everybody was like, "Oh, you idiots drafted Kyle Pitts over Mark Andrews." Andrews hasn't done shit in forever. What do you think his advance rate is going to be?
There's so many good second rounders that it's hard for him to be a high advanced rate guy, is what I would say. But the flip side
Even with
is,
tight end, sorry, I just have to add on to this. Even with tight end, the tight end thing, would you rather have Andrews, Tyreek, or AJ Brown?
I mean, I still want Tyreek, I guess, out of the three of those guys, because Tyreek's ceiling is best player in the world, like on any given Sunday,
Mhm.
right? I mean, and we've
Mhm.
seen that it's continuing in Miami. So I think I would rather have Tyreek. Andrews, I just looked at mine. I only drafted 4 Andrews teams in BBM. Only one is advancing right now.
It's close. It's close for me.
I liked a lot of the second round guys. Funny enough, this is one of the Garrett
3-0.
Wilson teams that I was looking at too.
3 of them and 0 are advancing. There, 2 of them are not dead though. They're
Yeah,
alive.
those look live.
Najee, that one's dead. Najee's on it.
Yeah.
But JT, CH is dead, but that's not bad.
RIP to Felix. He's got to be real down bad now.
Real down bad. If this injury is serious to Najee, really, really down bad.
Hate to see it happen to a millionaire.
Yeah, I know. Really, if there's one guy that needed the money, it was
it was Felix.
It was Felix. All
he
right,
told us he's retiring when he's like 12 years old or something like that last week.
He's like, I think I'm going to retire in 3 years. I'm like, fuck you, dude. We're the same age. We literally went to high school together. Like, I'm not interested in hearing about your 37-year-old retirement plans. And then I'm definitely not interested in hearing about woe is me on Najee Harris. He won $1 million. Like, fuck off.
I literally wanted to just stand up and go throw myself in the trash when he said he was retiring in 3 years. I'm
going to be streaming best ball drafts when I'm 40. This dude's going to be on a beach somewhere.
Alex be nice.
So this was one of the guys that I was going to bring up. Alex says Mike Williams. I think Mike Williams is a guy who would have had like a reasonable advance rate, again, in that tier in the AJ Brown, Tyreek stuff, and Mark Andrews. He's one of the few guys that I think was kind of a hit right there. But obviously, this injury is going to absolutely tank that. So you see, I have 27 Mike Williams teams, only 11% are advancing. But I mean, my God, this is a huge discrepancy. 26% are within 20 points of advancing. So if he can come back, that would be really swell. So I could get some of these teams through. That would be nice. But I think he's that kind of archetype of a guy that you want to get through. Be the only team with Mike Williams in your group in the playoffs or whatever. He's the very much a Kmart version of your Jamar Chase thesis, right?
Absolutely.
On a great offense, high upside wide receiver, and low ownership.
Gabe might even be that way. I mean, a little bit further down.
Oh God, I forgot. Felix did. I have to oblige Felix because he asked me about my Gabe advance rate earlier, and I didn't pull it up. So look, 6. So I have 60 Gabe teams. He's my highest owned player. 15%. Advancing with 23% within 20 points. He's definitely on that list for me, for sure. Like the teams that are advancing with Gabe, I'm very, very much excited for it because, the 100-yard, 2-touchdown game is always there for him. Same thing. I think it's those wide receivers are the guys. Chase,
but I think we
Gabe,
know that
Mike Williams.
With Mike Williams and Gabe Davis and those type of players, we know that. Well, you should know. Maybe you don't understand it, but when you draft those guys, your advance rate with those guys are probably going to be lower. It is about the type of player they are. When you get them through, the damage that they can do is just like those are guys that you're like, fuck, I didn't have Gabe Davis this week. And you're dead because you didn't have Gabe Davis. So that Mike Williams is the same way. Like, you just have to understand when you're drafting those guys, you're already giving that team that you're drafting a higher risk tolerance, right? So, but you have to be willing to take those guys, and people aren't, and that's why they lose or they min cash for the entire year. It's like, oh, I made a 5% ROI on what I did. I didn't draft Gabe Davis though, or Mike Williams. And if I did, maybe I would have been a higher one, or maybe you would have been lower, but you would have had a chance at winning.
Yeah, you would have had a chance at winning. Right. Exactly. Only final honorable mention I'm going to put out there, which I'm playing to my co-host, is literally every Chiefs wide receiver.
Yep.
So You can have them with Mahomes and Kelsey, of course, but like you could also have them as leverage off of Kelsey. And they're all cheap. They were all cheap. Juju's working his way back, so he's not going to be, and he hasn't been great. He's had a couple good weeks, but he's not going to be a high ownership player in the playoffs. And then you have MVS, who has only quasi popped off a couple of weeks. We haven't quite got the full MVS experience, but he's still out there getting his cardio in. Every Sunday.
So much cardio.
As long as he's there's a chip in a chair as long as he's out there playing. It's all that matters. That's the whole thesis behind him is, it hasn't worked out perfect for, you didn't get the upside case, but you haven't got the floor was he lost his job. And they traded for Kadarius Toney, who I know has been hurt, but he could have lost this job.
Yeah.
They got 4 other wide receivers, and he hasn't. And so MVS would be a Juju, MVS, even Sky is not quite getting there in terms of the route participation, but he's earning targets when he's out there now. And he's going to be, ain't nobody having Sky in your group because he has literally done absolutely nothing all season. And then the other two, the 2 gadget boys, if Toney can get back and Hardman, if Hardman can get back, that any one of those guys can have the week from a late round wide receiver or Juju, a mid round wide receiver that, 102 at any point in time. So I think, and the Kelsey leverage, I don't think can be like totally undersold. Like if you have a Mahomes, MVS, Hardman stack or whatever, and Hardman comes back and Mahomes is the QB you need, but Kelsey just goes like 6 for 70 and all the touchdowns go everywhere else. I mean, go get ready to go to the bank like that. That's the dream. You know what I mean? And so I think the Chiefs wide receivers, but it's a collective. Like I don't know which one. Mahomes doesn't know which one. I certainly don't know which one.
Do I tell the chat how many MVS teams I have in Best Ball Mania?
Yeah, please. I've already forgot how many it is. I just know it's an exorbitant amount.
It is 77. My advance rate is 20% with them, with 31%. 31% within advancing.
That's
so
nice.
MVS is the guy you need.
Fuck. Okay, I hope it's not MVS now because I won't beat you. You're gonna have more.
Do we want to know the Mahomes stack lineups with MVS?
Yeah, Mahomes and MVS.
39, with 30% of those advancing and 41% within 20 points.
41 within 20. That's nice. That's really nice.
Your boy's gonna make some money if MVS is the guy you need in any of these weeks.
The other reason that I'm glad you said that I brought them up was if anyone doesn't know the Chiefs' schedule in the playoffs, go take a look because you don't want to be fading these dudes when they play the freaking Texans, the Seahawks, and the Broncos, who may be loud quitting by the time we get to week 17. The defensive players are trying to beat the shit out of Russell Wilson on the sideline. So what do you think Mahomes is going to do to these guys in week 17? Like he gets the Texans, the Seahawks, and at home the Broncos, who are going to be so far out of it that they don't care. He's going to crush. Like the Chiefs are going to crush the fantasy playoffs.
I'm getting excited in the pants just thinking about it.
And that's time for us to move before Rob's desk
lifts up.
Starts lifting up. Anything else though that you wanted to hit on before we get on?
Yeah, I wanted to ask you. We started Scott Fishbowl playoffs this week, and I was just curious how. I think you advanced, right? I think I looked down and I saw you
look down. Fuck off.
I mean, some of us are in 43rd overall right now.
Yeah, I got like 600th or whatever.
Yeah, my team, and I used none of my fab dollars the entire offseason.
Oh, I used my fab. I picked up Ellinger when he went down. That went well.
Good.
But I mean, I have Lamar and Kyler, so I've literally started them every single week. So it doesn't really matter. My team's actually pretty good. Kittle at tight end. My only tight end has been hit or miss, but obviously went 0 RB. Ramondre's been awesome. I'm trying to think. Got pretty good. I have a pretty good team. It's not amazing. Lamar and Kyler haven't worked out perfectly, but I have a pretty good team. AJ Brown, Diggs, Gabe, decent team. I can do some damage, I think.
My team is a lot of fun. I was trying to pull it up on the Spike
Oh, I
Week.
picked up Mike White. I picked up Mike White this week. So when I get the Kyler bye week, I get to enjoy the Mike White experience that apparently is very fun based on what we saw 2 days ago.
My team's pretty fun as well. It's Kyler and Trevor Lawrence for my quarterbacks. And my running backs are McCaffrey, Ramondre, basically, is who I start for my 2. And then my wideouts are A.J. Brown, Stephon Diggs, Chris Godwin, DeAndre Hopkins, Christian Kirk, Cortland Sutton. Then I got like MVS if I want them, and then Higbee and Hawkinson for tight ends. It's like
your wide receivers are silly. I thought
silly.
Mine were pretty. I thought mine were pretty good. So you see here, Lamar, Kyler. I picked up good old Bryce Perkins. Why? I don't know, just for fun. Mike White, Eno. So Eno leaving kind of hurt me. But Foreman, Michael Carter, Foreman, fucking Melvin. I have so much Melvin. What a disaster. Hilliard.
He's on the
Madison,
Chiefs now.
McKinnon. Yeah. We haven't lost our week 17 correlation, at least, with Melvin. Unless he was your bring back. Now it's just an onslaught. But Ramondre, P. Ryan has been helpful. P. Ryan has been very, very helpful. And then A.J. Brown, Hollywood, DeAndre Carter, who I did pick up DeAndre Carter, Gabe Davis, Stephon Diggs, Elijah Moore, Devonta Smith, George Kittle, and good old James Mitchell.
Yeah.
From the Lions. So pretty good team.
Yeah, I'm hoping we both get through to the end on this. That would be a lot of fun.
Definitely.
Good for the brand that we can win a season-long fantasy football league and not a best ball one.
Yeah, exactly. Like,
imagine if we come in first and second.
Well, I was grinding the waivers. See, you don't understand. What you don't understand is that the most important thing is the in-season aspect of fantasy football.
We just we work for a best ball site. That's
yeah. Exactly. What I do want to tease really quickly is we're going to have a bunch more shows, probably similar to this, where we're either celebrating or tilting our faces off with the guys who go off, leading up here into the best ball playoffs. And then obviously when the best ball playoffs get here, it's go time. You can come show up, share your teams that have advanced, right? The ones you're most excited about, the ones we get to week 16 and week 17, the teams that you continue to have advance. Hopefully Rob and I also have some teams that will advance. We're going to be just talking about this nonstop really for the next month or so as we head into the playoffs. Because if you guys hadn't, I think about this too much. We all think about this too much. But I'm getting excited. For it to get here. So I want to talk to you guys as much as we can about it.
I'm going to throw a show idea at you while we're alive. Next week, do we want to do a show together where we look over our lineups that we drafted with another person on stream? So if you drafted a team with Corain, say, or whoever, just if you drafted a team with someone and they're advancing or relatively close to advancing in that final week, we'll kind of look over them. Fun fact, I don't know if everyone remembers the big board draft I did with Corain, where I didn't let him draft a wide receiver until like the 8th or 9th round. That team is advancing right now.
Unbelievable.
So we'll be looking at that team next week.
Unbelievable. I love it. We'll get out of here. Thank you guys for hanging out with us. That was a ton of fun conversation. I'll be back tomorrow, and I think Thursday we'll get you guys a more firm schedule moving forward. Been trying to finalize that. And of course, check out the Discord. Final plug for that. Hop in the Discord. We're talking about this stuff literally like 24/7. It's crazy. But Rob and I will see you guys next week, and enjoy your one of the last regular season weeks. See ya.